Hey guys, I'm Filip, designer co-founder of Subframe, and today we're going to be showing you how to take your designs and actually build with them using our new MCP server. So you're going to see how I take this project that I started. It's a little app that I want to design, and I'm going to bring it in from Subframe into Cursor as a blank project and actually build a working version that matches our designs exactly. So let's get started. You can see here that I built out a couple pages for my app. It's pretty simple. Basically what I'm going for is it's kind of chat interface, but what it does is let you create lists. I like to create lists of things, and often I want to get a bunch of recommendations based on the things in my list. So this is going to be something that eventually I'll hook up with probably an OpenAI API to actually dynamically generate these recommendations. But today we're basically just going to set up the front end and a project so that we could actually take our designs and incorporate them into a real working code base. And we'll see that from start to finish. So this design is pretty simple, right? 3 pages. I kind of have a sidebar, kind of have this list. I made these components. We have like a floating list header, some custom input bar. This is a list item itself. So these are all really basic components that I just made inside of Subframe. They're custom components that are able to be synced. And that's going to allow us to iterate on the design really easily after we bring it to code. And then you could click on any of these and actually get a little floating panel with details. So you could imagine that you've built out, right, a few of these states, and now you want to start incorporating it into a real app. So everything you made in Subframe is already generating the React and Tailwind front-end code for this page that syncs with the components that I set up in my design system. Now, if I actually want to build it into a real app, I'm going to have to move it into a tool like Cursor or your favorite IDE. I'm going to use Cursor today, but we also work well with Cloud Code for MCP server support and other tools as well if you follow the set up your code base manually. But Cursor is going to be really easy. It's really popular, and you'll get to see just how I bring this to life. So to do this, I'm going to first go open up a page, go into my code tab, and click installation. You can see that you could set things up manually, and we're actually going to use this as well. But if you go here, we have an MCP server that lets you instantly sync your designs with Subframe. So first, let's go ahead and install the MCP server. I'm going to go into Cursor, and I'm just going to click this button, Add to Cursor. It's going to be really easy. It opens up Cursor. You can see it asks to install the MCP server with the authentication already in here. I'm just going to click install. See, it loaded the tools, and you can even preview that. We have a number of tool calls that the MCP server uses. It lets you get information about the project, like the components and the theme, as well as specific metadata and the code for each component and page. This is going to let us just paste links into our AI agent, and MCP's server is going to take care of getting all the code and matching it up with the code base. So when I'm in Cursor, that was really easy. I'm going to go back to Subframe, and let's go ahead and copy this installation prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, bring it into Cursor, and I'm going to paste this here. Now, I know that I'm creating a new project, so I'm just going to get rid of this first prompt right here. And it's going to say to create a new project with Subframe using Vite. Going to use that. You could use Next.js. This is basically going to use a starter kit that we provide that's going to make it really easy to get a lot of the initial setup working, as well as even things like Google Fonts that we need to set up on a global level. So I'm just going to edit this name here as well. This will be my Subframe MCP list app. Let's go ahead. I'm just using agent mode on auto, something that hopefully should work for everyone. And it's going to start running these commands for us. Now, you could do the same thing just by pasting this link, the CLI command inside of Subframe, and it's going to walk you through setting up the project. But if you're unfamiliar with CLI or terminal tools, that's where the AI agents and prompting is really good. You can see it really just is running those commands for us. It's initializing the project and performing everything we need. So once that's done, we can see that our folder, we can expand that here. And you can see that it's set up the basic structure of my folder. Now, this is the really cool part that helps you understand how Subframe truly works, is if I go to this UI components folder, all of these components that you see here are directly coming from the components that I have in Subframe. So basically synced my entire design system and brought all of these components, including the custom ones like detail panel, you could see that I could just find this here locally, detail panel, and this is that exact component that's now available in my project. This is the best way to build a custom design system and then ensure that any AI code agent you use, or if you're just developing yourself, will use the components that you have in Subframe. It's a really great way to get that design system set up. Now, if I go ahead and just run this, you can see that it actually started that in this terminal command. Let's go ahead and I'm just gonna go into this folder and run npm install. Now again, you could prompt these things, but I recommend just learning how to do it yourself. npm run dev, really easy. And now if I follow this link, we got our local host running and it says, welcome to Subframe. So now we're ready to actually start bringing in our Subframe designs directly into that project. A really easy way to do this is just to show you how well Subframe converts into your local code base. I'm actually just gonna copy and paste this entire code, and I'm gonna go to our app, which right now is just showing this welcome to Subframe. And I'm just gonna paste in this page right here. Now, if I go to my local dev, you can see that instantly, I just have my entire Subframe design, like it's not functional, it's just the front end, is directly in my local host. So that's how easy it is to get something up and running and see that everything you build translates to code so easily. Now, if I'm actually trying to make and develop this into a real app, I'm probably gonna ask Cursor to set some things up for me and give it more context. So let's go ahead and do that. The best context, in my opinion, is your designs themselves. And now with this MCP server links, it's easier than ever to provide that to an AI agent. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go to code and copy the links for all these pages. I'm gonna start to create my prompt over here on the right. So this is gonna be a high-level prompt to get this completely working. I'm actually gonna undo my changes here so that we're starting fresh. And let's go ahead and create a high-level prompt. So at a high level, I'm just giving it some very basic context. You probably want to make this a lot more comprehensive if you're truly building out a project. But the main thing is that I'm just going to set up the initial front end for my designs, and we'll set up the full backend and AI service later. So I'm going to start to paste these MCP links for each one of my pages, which pretty much works as a view. So I'm going to copy this and say that this is my initial empty state. For number 2, I'm going to go in here and say that this is what a list view looks like. And then 3, and then for 3, we have our detail panel that should show up and update the state of these items as well. So I'm going to copy that. All right, and then I'm just going to give it maybe some more high-level context to just tie it all together. All right, so you can see that I gave it a bunch of things to do. I linked those designs, and let's go ahead and put Cursor to work. Now you can see that our MCP is actually running, that it got all those URLs at once. So it's actually really helpful to give it a bunch of context from different pages. That's going to help it understand a bit of more of the structure that's happening. You can see that also is able to read all the components that we have. That's because we ran that initialization and sync. So we can see all these components that are available that are being used in those pages. And now Cursor created a bunch of to-dos to implement the empty state, this list view, detail view, and the functionality. So while that's running, I'm just going to go over and talk a little bit about, when is the right time to move into this stage. I think Subframe really lets you create, the initial design system as well as really high fidelity designs for that UI and these custom components. I think a lot of people either start, if you're starting completely from scratch, you might do a lot of upfront work in Subframe, and our prototype tool is actually a great place to do that as well, because I could do something very similar right now, just in the prototype tool inside of Subframe by annotating my designs, prompting it, and building a little interactive web app right inside of Subframe. That's really great because it actually follows the very same mental model as exporting to code. We're doing similar things with, being able to reference the designs, tie them together, and build a web app that functions with in sort of an isolated way. That's why we kind of call it a prototype. But when you're moving to code, that usually means you already have an existing page, existing code base that you're working with, or you just feel confident about, a good starting point to be able to bring into a functional code base. Now, MCP is really amazing because it's able to just reference all this code. And so it doesn't really matter if you're already starting with something or starting from scratch. You could just use these links to provide these AI code agents with context so that you could ask it to refactor things to match your designs, or build out new functionality, or make changes to existing ones, which we'll probably do next. But you can see that worked pretty quickly. I'm sure this implementation isn't amazing, but it's probably going to get the job done for us. So I'm going to go ahead, keep all these changes, and let's go ahead and see our local host. So let's refresh that. And you can see that as I prompted, we're starting with our empty state. It looks exactly how I designed it. I'm going to go ahead and maybe click this plus button. We got new list number 1. And let's go ahead and start adding some items here. Let's go ahead and add some bands like we were working on. We'll do something different than the design. So let's go ahead and do Red Hot Chili Peppers. Press enter. Boom. Created our list item. You can see that it's doing these hard-coded recommendations, I imagine. If I do Hot Chili Peppers, and then let's do Eilish, something completely different, right? It's not actually getting the images. We didn't hook up any of this data, but we are getting recommendations added. I could probably click that and add it. And then we can also click on these and see that, it's keeping a lot of these placeholder values, but it is updating these things how we want. And I can duplicate this list, right? I can delete items from here, or no, I actually didn't add that functionality yet. We can delete a list, create a new one. And yeah, we have pretty much a working app right out of the get-go that matches our designs exactly. From here, I would probably start prompting things like, let's add an actual LLM call to create these recommendations and enrich the data. But imagine we did that, and maybe I changed the design. Maybe we'll go ahead and go back to our pages. Maybe this detail panel, I want to make some changes. So, instead of the share button, let's add another button here. Let's make this one large as well. Maybe we'll do create, new list. And so that's going to allow us to take this and add it to a new list with these recommendations. Maybe I'll go back to the component and I'm going to make some changes here. Maybe some of it is very just stylistic. Let's just update these styles a little bit. Maybe let's make this a little bigger. All right, we'll make some small changes. And even update our theme. So this is a pretty minimal setup. If I go ahead and even ask this entire page to just be like, update the background to be a linear gradient from neutral 50 to neutral 200. I can make changes like this right inside of Subframe because I'm still in design mode. And then we'll see how quick and easy it is to add that directly to the code that we're already working with. So we got our gradient here. And I'm going to actually go ahead and maybe I have a new idea, which is, let's move these pills to the bottom. So maybe I want these recommendations to kind of float here. We could go ahead, redesign these a little bit, make them look a little bit more like our other UI elements. And we also want these to be here at the bottom. So for this, I'm actually going to do absolute bottom, probably like 16. Give it a max width. So we need that a little higher. Great. So now that will show up right there. So nothing crazy in terms of changes, but let's go ahead and see how well it updates. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and grab the code again. I'll just have to do this link for the MCP server. And I'm going to go ahead and prompt it. And we'll say, so this is where, code really lets you add a lot more flexibility, whether it's these animated things or, things based on logic. But putting them together sort of with the context of what you've already built in code, the context of your designs using the MCP, being able to sync those components, and then finally, external libraries and AI code agents kind of really able to orchestrate it. It's really easy to build working apps that match your designs exactly and really still let you design first and then bring things in over to code. Now, if I wasn't using an MCP server, I'd probably just be inspecting this code directly. When you're in Subframe and you look at the code tab just to inspect, right? We always just show you everything that's selected. You're able to copy these code snippets. So that's really good for making sort of small changes. Or if you're not using an MCP server, you could paste those directly into the AI agent. Or as you get better at building apps, actually be able to, inspect the code yourself and find the right places to make changes. So it looks like this is done already. Let's go ahead, look at our local dev, gotta refresh it. We're back to new lists. Let's go ahead and create a new one. Let's go ahead and add some things again. I'm gonna do my favorite hot sauce, Tabasco. We add that in here. And you can see now that our pills are at the bottom. You can see now that our designs also changed a little bit, right? It was able to take in these new buttons that exist here. If I click this pill, we got a cool little animation. Now, of course, that's something I'd probably want to iterate on, but it's pretty cool to see that come to life. Let's see if I create new list worked. Yep, so it did that. Now, didn't understand that I actually want to create that list with that item. So that's something that I would prompt to add that functionality. But as you can see, we went from just some designs to actually a real working app that I have on local that I can continue to iterate. So one thing you might notice is that some of our designs actually didn't carry over immediately. These pills don't quite match the pills I have here. And that's because there's one more step to actually sync your components directly to use the latest from Subframe. And that's going to happen with this sync component command. So I can actually do it for all the components on the page. So by clicking away, you can see sync all components in the page. And I can just go ahead, copy this. Let's go back here. And I could ask the agent to do this. I'm actually just gonna make it easier and do it directly in the terminal. And all I have to do is just make sure I'm in the right folder here and run this command. And that's gonna basically, similar to what we did with the MCP setup, but actually this is just getting the latest for the components. So if we go ahead and refresh, you can see that now that pulled in that change. These are updated, they still animate. We got this design here as well. And so that's a really key distinction, is that anything that you create a component, Subframe becomes the source of truth, and you can sync them individually. And anything that's an entire page is something that you use the MCP server to get the code and refactor your existing code base as needed. So MCP server really allows you to get set up really quickly, along with our starter kits, and using tools like Cursor, Claude Code, or even other AI code tools. Everything you design in Subframe, you can build in production and really control that design going forward. Hope this helped, and excited to see what people build with this new MCP server.